Good evening and welcome to another Crossroads. I'm just waiting for Susan Lee. I don't know where she is at the moment, but she'll be here any moment, any moment. And I hope everybody is well. Gosh, and it's been hot for the last few days. My ears, my ears going all over the place. And gosh, yeah. So anyway, I'm waiting for Susan Lee, and as soon as Susan Lee comes, we'll be able to start. Don't forget, guys, if you want to leave a message, you can on your right hand column. And also, don't forget, we have got Mark Mentris and yeah, and um, yeah, so it's Mark Mentris and everything. So we're just waiting now. Just wait for a second. So we're just waiting for Susan Lee. She'll be here for a sec. Okay, guys, don't worry. Don't. She'll be here in a minute. We're just waiting. Why? Here we go.
There we go.
Hello.
Hello, excellent.
All
Can
right.
you, am I all right? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Hi. No, disagreement.
A disagreement, absolutely. Well, I think most relationships will have, whether it's with a partner, a family member, a work colleague, a friend, there are going to be situations in life when we don't get on with someone, when we disagree, and it depends how heated that gets or how vicious that gets or how unpleasant that gets. And so, we thought that tonight, you suggested tonight that we talk about tips for dealing with disagreement, because it is, there are several, Brexit, COVID, football matches, Olympic teams, whatever it might be. There's lots of areas at the minute that are in the mainstream, but also on a personal level, we can find that we disagree with people about just day-to-day things anyway, can't we?
Yeah, I am. I have disagreements with people nearly every day over certain things. So,
Yeah.
But the trouble is, how do we deal with a disagreement when we have to go?
How do we deal with disagreements when we with people?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's I've sort of identified, for me, I think there's, say, 5 key steps. And I think one of them is that it's important to clarify the main issues as we see them. So we will have a view. We can think about certain things in a certain way. We need to be clear what it is that our point of contention is, what it is we're unhappy about, clarify that in our own thoughts, what it is that's going on that is annoying us so much. Now, often when what I call drill down, we may find that what's initially bothering us is actually just the top layer of something that is an issue. Like, for example, a good example is supposing somebody leaves a dirty cup or a pile of papers or a load of washing on the floor or the papers on the table or something, and we spent all day cleaning the house, for example. we may be annoyed, we may be shouting about the cup of the dirty cup or the papers on the table, but actually in reality it's more than that. In reality we're upset because we felt disrespected, or we feel somebody's not valuing our contribution, or they're just taking us for granted. And so that might be the drilled down deeper reason for why we are unhappy or falling out with somebody. And we need to have that conversation and say, actually, I know I've blown up about the dirty cup, but actually I'm really quite bothered that you don't seem to, you know, the feeling it's giving me is that I'm being taken for granted, I'm not appreciated. And that can be an interesting prompt to start a conversation.
I have problems disagreement sometimes because if someone disagrees with me, and I'm thinking, first is why ask you? You know, why ask the question, or why? It depends on the situation, though, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it depends whether there's other people there, whether you're on your own, how you read the other person's body language. Did they come across as hostile? You know, something as simple as having their lips pursed or their arms folded or stood, you know, in a quite stiff way. Those things can give you a much more threatened feeling than if somebody's smiling and appears relaxed and has a hand on the head or put their arm on the hand on your shoulder or something. So body language, atmosphere, who else is there, whether other people seem to be agreeing with you or not, all these factors can make an impact on how you come across and how you feel yourself in that situation too. And also the dynamics of the way forward, how it moves forward as well.
I didn't know that posture could do it.
I beg your pardon?
I didn't know that posture could...
posture, yeah. Yeah, because something like, actually, you know, 85-90% of communication is done non-verbally. So if we are, you know, if you know yourself, the situations where we perhaps meet somebody else and we may not have shared many words, but we might come away and say to our partner or other people, or we might think to ourselves, oh, there was something about that person that I don't know what it was, I just didn't quite like them, or I didn't quite gel, or something about that person made me feel really good and relaxed and happy. And that, if they've not spoken much, a lot of that is coming across from body language, from stance, from expressions, from whether their body's stiff or relaxed, whether the breathing is shallow, where they're feeling a bit, potentially coming across as maybe a little bit aggressive. You know, some people have, you know, a face that when it's resting, they look like they're angry. So some people, when they're not smiling or they're not animated, their face can appear quite aggressive or angry or unfriendly. And sometimes it's just that. It's just the way they look when they all sat like that. So we have to kind of take those things on board, but also notice the impact that has actually on us when we're interacting with others.
But Susan, that might be a permanent thing for somebody.
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, the way we are, the way we naturally are. I mean, it colours our relationships. And some people will say, when I first met that person, I didn't like them, but I've grown to like them over the last few weeks and months as I've got to know them better. And that might be because of how they seem just without animation. That might be how they seem when they're just walking or chatting or just quietly, you know, doing whatever it is they're doing. They may be nervous, they may be stressed, they may be shy. So a lot of these things have to be taken into account when we are interacting with people. But in the height of a disagreement about something, a viewpoint about something, that's why it's so important to understand what's actually going on with the other person. And that's another point. That's the second point, really, is really listen to the other person too. Because we may have worked out what it is that's annoying us or causing the disagreement for us. But we need to be clear about what the other person's particular issue is. So again, are they angry because we have a different opinion? Are they angry because of the way we presented it? Are they angry because of how they felt they found out? There can be lots of different things going on with the other person. And sometimes we have to ask questions. And the big one there is shut up. Ask the question. what is it about this? What's going on? Open questions. What, why, where, when? What is it about this? What happened? Tell me more. Tell me how you're feeling. And then listen, let them explain, because if we're second guessing, we're filling in the blanks, we're assuming that we know, I bet they feel that way because of this or that. We're doing them a disservice, and we're also actually doing the relationship a disservice. So sometimes being quiet and letting the other person explain themselves, and if they take a little bit of time or they're not really quite sure about the words they're using, still stay quiet and let them have that space to formulate their thoughts and come to a sense of what it is they're wanting to say.
Yeah. That was my problem yesterday, actually, when I did a walk yesterday where I live. And this person's been nagging me for a long time. And I said, you're boss, right? And she said to me, is it because you talk, do you think I'm boss? And I said, no, it's not because I don't like to talk to you. I don't know what to talk about. And I had to apologise to say, look, I'm sorry if I'm not office with you. But we don't have a conversation, we don't kind of like, there's nothing there.
And the truth is, not everybody's going to be your cup of tea. Not everybody's going to be your bosom buddy or your next mate or the person that you socialise with. But if we have to meet people on a regular basis because they're work colleagues or they're neighbours or they're in-laws or they come as part of the deal with your wife or your husband, then we have to learn to rub along okay and be deferential, be respectful, not put ourselves down, but at the same time, maybe smile when we perhaps might not feel tempted to smile, or be a little bit more courteous or polite. And sometimes we have to just do that and just get by, because we know it's a fact of life, it's a situational thing, and it's part, in my opinion, it's part of being an adult too. Knowing that we don't get on with everybody necessarily. We don't like everybody, everybody won't like us. But if we have to make some meat on occasion, then it's far better to be a little bit more harmonious, a little bit more polite, a bit more courteous. And that's another point. Decide what it is you want out of the outcome. So if you've had a dispute with a neighbour over the fence or their trees that are growing over your hedge or something, what do you want as an outcome from this? Are you going to just say, right, I'm chopping them down, I don't care what you think? Or are you thinking to yourself, actually, hang on a minute, it might be better to take a little bit more time, have a chat with them about it, gradually trim them back a bit, or whatever it is, and decide what outcome do I want from this, whether it's with a partner or a friend or somebody who you want to have a good relationship with and keep that. What compromises are you prepared to make? What do you want as an outcome from this? How are you gonna sort of focus on getting that, expressing that, putting that across in a way where they don't feel disrespected or whatever, so that you agree to meet somehow or other in the middle and find a way that you know what you want from the outcome, but you're working towards that too.
Sometimes having a disagreement with somebody, the other person might even kind of like what to talk about it, wouldn't they?
Well, there is that, of course, as well. And softly catch the monkey, because if they don't want to talk about it and you do, well, of course, there's not much point one person keep banging on about it every time they meet and saying, I need for you to talk, and chipping away at the relationship and chipping away at what they want to say. If the other person doesn't want to speak about it, we can explain ourselves till we're blue in the face, but it's just going to put them off and make them feel more walled off about the relationship and make them feel perhaps more angry or threatened or disrespected. Sometimes we have to think, okay, the other person doesn't want to talk about it. I've gently encouraged them. I've gently suggested, shall we go, sometimes going somewhere neutral is a good place to talk about hostilities or tension in a relationship. So going somewhere in public where it can't devolve into a shouting match, you're going to have to be a little bit quieter and a little bit more respectful if you're talking. But also, sometimes knowing that, going for a walk, or actually perhaps even engaging a therapist or a relationship counselor or a mediator, or you're a religious guru or a neighbour who you both respect, or somebody, bringing somebody else, a third party in, can sometimes help facilitate a conversation to move forward. But again, you have to, both parties have to agree to do that. Both parties have to do that. And if they're not prepared to talk, then you have to say, okay, can I live with the relationship? Are we still going to be meeting quite a lot? If this is the way it is and the other person doesn't want to talk about it, is that okay for me? Can I just move on and forget what happened? And the thing with that, though, it does fundamentally change the relationship. Because if there's a big, they call it an elephant in the room, if there's something that's not been talked about, but it's a bit of a boulder, then that might stay there. But if you're going to keep walking around it and trying to get under it and over it, it's still going to be there. And sometimes that might be good enough. You just get by on that. But if it's not, then you have to decide what happens next.
Yeah, that's a toxic relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would get out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. When somebody has a disagreement, like with your partner or a friend, what's the best way to deal with somebody who doesn't agree with us?
Well, I think we have to acknowledge our own part in any situation. And I think sometimes if we hold our hand up and say, I accept, I acknowledge that I may have come across as full on or angry or unpleasant or controversial or whatever it might be. Sometimes if we acknowledge our own part in a disagreement, that can be a huge step for the other person to feel that you've taken in their direction. So sometimes the other person might feel good because you're not just going, you said this and you said that and this happened because of your this or that or the other. Blame culture just serves to get the other person's back up, serves them to feel protective about themselves, maybe become defensive, maybe even attack in defense of themselves. So I think if we can acknowledge our own part in it and maybe start by saying, look, I mean, don't apologise for something that you're not sorry for, but perhaps saying I'm sorry for the upset that's been caused, or I'm sorry for the damage this has done to our relationship. And I appreciate that I may well have overstepped the mark about this or done something wrong in that direction. And I think that can be a big help to another person to feel that we are trying. It shows that we care. It shows that we want to fix something. It shows that we're prepared to acknowledge that it's not all about somebody else, that we have a responsibility and we're owning it. We're owning our part in the tension that's been caused. And I think that can be a big step.
Yeah. In your job, you probably see a lot of people. And what do you deal with it? If someone's having a disagreement with somebody there and then, how do you take time out? Or how do you cope with it?
You mean if I'm doing relationship counselling?
Yeah.
If I'm doing relationship counselling, I start out by saying, as far as I'm concerned, there's two rules, if you like. I'm paraphrasing now, but there's two rules. One is that when one person speaks, the other doesn't interrupt. And the second rule is that it's honesty all the time, even if it's not nice to hear it. It's honesty. You're in a neutral environment. You're paying to be in a neutral environment, so let's work it. And I think so. But if a disagreement starts in a therapy session, it's usually because both of them are talking, and they're firing off loads of examples. And one thing I very much aim to do in a therapy session is to say, let's avoid all the examples, because the truth is, if we're having a disagreement and we keep digging up examples, we usually find that we're repeating old ground, going over stories that have been told many, many, many times before, and things that probably
happen?
Pardon?
Why do that happen?
Well, because people are defensive, aren't they? If somebody says, well, usually people like to quote an example of why they feel the way they feel, and it might have originated, at Mary's party. When we were at Mary's party, you didn't speak to me all night. You were speaking to that lad over there or that girl over there. You ignored me. I felt really embarrassed, or I felt you humiliated me in public, for example. And then that could devolve into, yes, but the only reason I did that was because you walked in and straight away made a beeline for somebody else and ignored me, or you got them a drink and you didn't get me one. And so we can find that people have stories and they remember a lot of this stuff in great detail. And they're going round and round and round and round. Now, as I said earlier on, you often find it's not about the feeling ignored. It's usually when you drill down and have a look at it, it's not about talking to the other girl or the other guy. What you often find is when you really look at what's going on, there's a pattern in there where one person perhaps has started to feel ignored or unimportant, or they have concerns themselves about their own appearance and they perhaps don't feel they're as attractive or as interesting as they used to be. Or they feel the partner's outgrowing them and seems to be more interested in other people or in their work or in other situations or whatever. There's a sense of growing apart. So those feelings of being threatened or undermined or whatever can cause somebody to become defensive, to cause somebody to perhaps start going a bit on the attack, to start perhaps lashing out. And often that is just because they're hurting. So when you realise that somebody is hurting, then you've actually got something you can do something about. So it's not about who they were talking to or whether they got ignored or not, whether work's more important. Those things are probably because of living and stress and pressures to earn money or just life in general, worried about an aged parent not being well. But when you realise that somebody's feeling ignored or unimportant or doesn't matter anymore, you can start then building on that. Reassurance, taking time, having a date night or something every now and again, making sure you perhaps go to bed at the same time and turn the telly off and turn your phones off and talk to each other once or twice a week, have a meal together, go for a walk in the evening for half an hour, and building in little hints and tips like that where you can improve your relationship and show each other that you care and spend time with each other, talking and sharing time, not just shopping, sharing news updates like next time you're at the supermarket, can you get some milk? But actually probably talking about feelings and what's going on and hopes and dreams. Then a couple can start reinvesting in their relationship and reminding each other of what they found attractive about each other. And these are simple tips that can turn a relationship completely around and really make it a very valuable part of your life again.
Brilliant. Thank you as always. Sometimes, guys, disagreement is difficult because it's like somebody having a disagreement. If we're going to have a disagreement with you, this is how I can't go to that person and say, right, okay, I'm sorry. And that's it. It's up to the other person then to acknowledge you. Which is how I see it. But also, don't bring up the past. Because the past is gone. It's the future. We've got to go ahead. So if you ever get an agreement, get a proper plan. Better love, kindness, and show somebody respect. That's what I say. Susan, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.